great. So thank you so much for joining me all this morning. Natalie mentioned that I have had a long sort of career in social media. And I have to say that when I first started doing social media, and especially social media consulting, social media education about how to use these different platforms, social media was very different than it is today. When it first started, it was a purely community-oriented type of platform. There was no monetization, meaning that you couldn't buy ads, you couldn't pay for space, and it was a very organic experience. That has completely changed in 2022, and it is absolutely driven by monetization now. And we're going to talk about how you can tell that just by using social media these days. And I do want to say that I can't necessarily see everybody, but if you have questions during the presentation, to please feel free to ask them, because you're not going to be the only person who has these questions. And as we have the slide up, sometimes it makes more sense for everybody to see the slide that way and ask the question. So let's sort of take a look at a few of the top social media platforms that you might have heard of as of 2022. Number one is still Facebook. I'm sure most people are familiar with Facebook. Even if you're not necessarily posting content, you probably have a Facebook account and you go on there to see pictures from your kids or from your friends and family. And it still is pretty much the major dominant platform for social media. Second to that is Instagram, which Facebook also owns. And that one sits in second place in terms of user base and as well as the content that's produced on there. So Instagram is basically a video and image sharing platform and accessible on your phone, only accessible on your phone, unlike Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn that have desktop options. Instagram and TikTok are only accessible via apps on a mobile phone. So that is a big difference there, and lends itself to that sort of content that you would have seen that is sort of live action, very video and movement oriented, and meant to capture moments in time and to really kind of give people as well an inside view of whether it's a brand or a content creator and what they're doing with that platform. One of the newest ones on the scene is called TikTok. I'm not sure if you've heard of that, but it became very popular during the pandemic, especially. And when the pandemic hit in March 2020, I was doing some media regarding working from home and also having your kids at home, doing their schoolwork from home, and what that meant for social media and content creation. So TikTok is, kids always find the latest and greatest things, and they're the ones who bring these things to the forefront. And I told people who were going to be home with their kids and, adults and that, to really kind of have fun with their kids during this pandemic, because things were hard. We weren't allowed to do normal things that we would do, weren't allowed to be at the normal places we'd want to be. So really, to have fun with their kids, try out TikTok, do a TikTok dance, try a TikTok trend, and really just embrace the fun of social media. And you don't have to learn necessarily how to use it. The kids can absolutely take care of that, but to lend yourself to be a character in their video and to just have fun with it. Gen Z might not be a familiar term, but that's a term that relates to people that were born usually around 2005 and later. And that is, they're going to be coming up on 18 very soon. And these are children who have grown up with devices in their hands. If you've ever given a device to a toddler or even to a 2-year-old, you know that they immediately pick up that device and can start scrolling. Isn't it incredible how these young people absolutely know how to use these things and just are not afraid, and they embrace it and just get really excited about it? Well, that's why social media is so popular, because that Gen Z cohort has absolutely embraced social media and loves putting out content, loves putting out videos. They use these apps to also chat with their friends. Many of these apps have chat functions, just like Facebook Messenger, and that makes it a little bit hard to break a little bit of that addiction. But also part of that is that they are very much influenced by what they see on social media, whether that is a social trend or something that they want to buy. So, for example, you might have heard that Rihanna recently reached $1 billion with her company Fenty. And that is largely due to her social media presence and her ability to produce content that resonates with that target market that would want to buy her makeup. She's incredible. And I've never seen anybody make pregnancy look so fashionable on social media except for Rihanna. Yeah, it's unbelievable. She is a force. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the birth of social media. So I have worked in this social media space for a long time, like almost since the beginning. You might remember if you were involved in, say, hiring, or if you were job hunting in the early 2000s, you might have tried out LinkedIn. That would have been sort of the first kind of serious publicly available social media platform that most people would have gravitated toward. You also might be familiar with, in the 90s, there were even things called internet chat rooms. And those types of technology and that type of social interaction was sort of a precursor to social media. So if you ever were involved in a chat board or an IRC room or ICQ chat, even AOL chat, those types of things are precursors to social media. So Facebook comes on the scene officially in 2006 when it becomes open to everybody outside of the college campus that it was developed on. And as I said, at the time, there was no monetization for the platform then. It was simply a sharing platform, a way to connect with people that you knew, and also to connect people that you didn't know. It was a smaller network, and it was a very interesting and new place to be. That has definitely changed over the years, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as I get into it. But Facebook and Twitter debuted around the same time. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Twitter, but it is actually my favorite social media platform, and I'll go a little bit more into that. But Twitter was born in New York City. And Twitter was born out of the idea that if you have a question somewhere, somebody has the answer to that question, which I think is brilliant, actually. And the founder, Jack Dorsey, one of the founders, Jack Dorsey, was interested about which place in New York City would have the best pizza at 4 a.m. in the morning. And he thought, if I could send a text message to the world, somebody would have an answer for that. And Twitter was born. So pizza has brought us a lot of good things, but it absolutely brought us Twitter as well. And I love Twitter for that reason. When I do these types of presentations, especially for business people, I always say that Twitter is for what you know, and Facebook is for who you know. So on Twitter, it's really easy to be, I don't want to say it's really easy, but it's a lot easier to become a subject matter expert in whatever area that you're working in, whether you work in business or not-for-profit, or you're an educator or a student. There are tons of chats that you can get involved in. There are people that you can follow and have discussions with, and even just, read their content. But Twitter is such a fantastic platform for the democratization of conversation, is what I've always called it. The democratization of conversation, meaning there are a lot of CEOs on Twitter. There are a lot of C-suite people on Twitter, politicians on Twitter. We won't talk about the one down south right now, but there are politicians who use Twitter to connect with their constituents and their people, to talk about policy. If you've ever followed any of the elections, there's one in Ontario happening right now. You can go on a hashtag called ONPoly, or for Manitoba, MBPoly. Alberta's is AB Ledge, and you can follow all of that content. I feel like Twitter was very much an important resource, especially during the pandemic, because you could follow things based on hashtags. Hashtags is that pound sign, and that icon is used to categorize conversations on Twitter. So let me go to 2010. 2010 is when we start seeing a bit more of the smaller kind of social media platforms that would move into sort of copycat realm. So that's when we see the advent of Instagram. Now, Instagram wasn't always owned by Facebook. It was actually its own entity in 2010. And Instagram was a game changer. So that's why I've used that date here. It was a game changer for making social media very much image-based. Before that, it was very much text-based. People weren't expected to share images. They weren't expected to share videos even. We'll talk about videos in one more second, but it was very much about text. It was very much like a blog. So people who had been blogging since the early 2000s, where you write your ideas down in sort of a mini little magazine and publish that online, they were sort of snippets of that on Facebook. But Instagram really kind of flipped that script in the sense that you could take a picture of something if you were in London and share that with your family and friends back home. And it was like they were there with you. That was not easy to do on Facebook at the time because, first of all, phones were not, oh, my blue screen there. Phones were not as easy to upload pictures to. And a lot of times people were using texting to upload their status updates to Twitter or Facebook. So the data, the ability to carry that data across the airwaves just simply wasn't there. Instagram changed that, allowing you to use a camera and post right immediately to a channel of your own. That also eventually included video, which became huge as well. So if you have worked in TV or production, you know that everything is usually shot horizontally to fit your TV screen or a movie screen. Well, Instagram has really kind of messed that up because their feed is vertical. So it is a tall kind of video feed. And if you are on Facebook now, you probably see yourself being served vertical video content all the time. You're like, where did this come from? How did this get here? Well, you can blame Instagram for that. In 2016, there's a lot of stuff that happens between 2010 and 2016, and we'll kind of talk about that. But 2016 is a watershed moment, in my opinion, for social media. And that is because of the rise of mis and disinformation online. So in between 2010 and 2016, we see the rise of apps like Meerkat, which was a live streaming video option. I remember talking about Meerkat when it first came out, huge potential in terms of, again, sharing with people. If we're at, for example, this event right here, if this was going to be held in a room like it normally would, someone could video stream this live from their phone and people anywhere in the world could interact with this content using your hashtag or someone that they know. And that made it really easy. Twitter came out with its own version called Periscope in about 2012, I believe, 2013. And I predicted at the time that Meerkat would be squashed by this competition because what these larger companies have done, Facebook and Twitter, is they simply mimic what's out there in the marketplace and catching on with people, and then they create their own version. And then they squash the little people who are trying to make their own types of tech companies, or they buy them. Facebook is very much an acquirer of other competitors. So in 2014, for example, they acquired Instagram. They were also looking at acquiring Snapchat, which is a private company as well, and Snapchat turned them down. Some people might say that was a mistake, but it depends on which side of the business argument you fall there. But they are a juggernaut when it comes to Facebook. And if they like what you're doing, they'll just copy it. And because of their user base, they simply have the volume to get that app or capability out there. I'm going to roll back just a little bit to 2004 and the birth of YouTube. So YouTube is also huge when it comes to social media and video and that content sharing piece. So if you watched the Super Bowl in 2004, with Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake, you probably remember the famous wardrobe malfunction that happened there. There's an interesting phrase like the mother of invention, right? So people were trying to find that video clip after that Super Bowl aired, and that wasn't really possible back then. So a couple of guys in their college dorm started coding, and that is how YouTube was born. YouTube was born so that people could look at Janet Jackson's wardrobe malfunction on demand, basically. So it's interesting to me that we haven't awarded Janet Jackson a big thank you for that, but we should. So YouTube and its presence online, its presence in social media, it is the second largest search engine on the planet. So if you're not using Google to look for something, you're actually using YouTube to look for something. And that YouTube, if you're searching for something, YouTube results will pop up in the results that you get higher than almost anything else because there's so much content being loaded onto YouTube every single day. Billions of hours of video go on YouTube every single day. It's incredible, isn't it? But YouTube for me is an interesting sidecar to social media because a lot of what people publish on YouTube gets cut and shared onto social platforms as well. So people build economies on YouTube where they can become partners and get paid for posting content on there and get paid to put ads in that content and then make money. So that helps bring about the topic of the creator economy, which we'll get into a little bit at the end. So last piece on this slide is 2016, a watershed moment with the US election and the spread of misinformation and disinformation. So that kind of really raises the bar in terms of the level of threat that is possible from social media on a large scale. I won't even go into online bullying and cyberbullying, but that piece of 2016 and what happened there with foreign entities coming in to populate content on social media platforms with very little oversight or regulation is a huge problem. So when I talk on TV, talking about what we need to do to improve social media experience, to improve social media companies, my number one thing is regulation. So if you operate online, there are always privacy laws and laws that you have to follow in certain countries. Now, Europe's privacy legislation is very strict, and they do have punitive measures that they will mete out if companies do not follow those strict regulations. Canada is not as strict as Europe, and the US is basically like a Wild West. There are no rules there. And that has led to unfettered growth of misinformation and disinformation online. And the thing about whether it's Facebook, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Twitter, it is difficult for these companies to manage that onslaught of content. And not only that, but it takes a toll on their actual human staff who have to monitor this stuff as well. So it really is incumbent upon governments to step in and regulate these companies for the betterment of our societies. I feel like I've been talking for a long time, so if anybody has any questions, please feel free. And I hope someone will let us know when those come up. So sort of the three buckets that I kind of classify things in is when it comes to social media, it's all about connection, right? We're there so that we can connect with the people that we want to be connected with. And then it goes back to the content that we're looking at while we're there. And then, of course, it comes to how can we discern if this content that we're consuming is credible? That is a huge piece of what we're looking at. I think in the early 2000s, that was not necessarily an issue. It seemed that it was easier for people to discern what was a joke or what was fake or what had been doctored. But now with technology being so clever, it is very difficult to tell what is real and what is not. And that is the case for videos as well. You may have heard the term deep fake, where somebody looks like they're saying something, whether it's an artist or a Hollywood star's face has been put on top of another, and it's made to mimic a facial expression. Those things have been used for nefarious purposes, including things called revenge porn, including things in the disinformation realm, and are very damaging to not just individuals who have to save their reputations and to take on lots of lawsuits and time and effort to clear their names of these things. But again, this goes back to regulation and having oversight on these social media companies, because the technology simply moves too fast and there's not enough oversight, and legislators, elected officials, are not up to speed on what this technology can do and how it can damage the lives and livelihoods of people. So when you're looking to who you want to connect with, depending on which social media platform you're on, whether it's Facebook, maybe you're looking for volunteer opportunities or looking to hire people, or you're looking to connect with brands or things that you're shopping for. The possibilities are obviously endless there when it comes to connecting, but there is a lot of connectivity in terms of what you see online. So you might have people who share, obviously friends and family share photos, share videos, but one of the things that people don't really seem to understand is that others can sometimes see what you comment on, what you share. And that is good sometimes, but sometimes it can be a reminder to be mindful of what you're sharing online and what you're commenting on online. When it comes to brands and news, I always hear the topic of, I looked at something on Amazon and then it appeared as an ad in a Facebook feed. And that is actually a real thing. And it's not as nefarious as you might think it is. But the simple answer to that is if you use the same email address for your Facebook account that you use for your Amazon account, that's exactly why that ad is there. Because Amazon, or whoever you were shopping with, saw that you went to their site, You may have, clicked around a certain item a number of times. Maybe you thought about putting it in your cart. Maybe you removed it from your cart. Maybe you left your cart there because you wanted to come back, and they want to make sure that you don't forget about that item. So it's called retargeting. That retargeting advertising reaches you on whichever platform that is connected to your email address or that cell phone number that you've logged into. So keep that in mind when you're looking for things online as well. And it's not necessarily that your phone is listening to you. It's just that, again, the technology is really that advanced and they can connect those dots on your email and your phone number. So when it comes to customization, LinkedIn is one of my favorite when it comes to customizations, simply because if you are a job hunter or a hiring manager, it is a great place to really showcase your capabilities and your skills. You have the opportunity to customize a banner image, which appears on your profile. You can also change your URL to something specific. So for example, if you were volunteering with this group and you are, say, one of the leads, you might want to change your LinkedIn URL to say linkedin.com/IOD/Mary. Like those types of things are very smart for branding. And if you're in sort of the job or volunteer market, those types of things can make you stand out. When it comes to sections on LinkedIn, it breaks down your job, yes, as well. But I really want people to think of LinkedIn as a way to share their accomplishments as well and to comment on the accomplishments of others. The last 2 years have been really hard for people. So many people lost their jobs. So many people are looking for jobs. And if you, whether you're in the workforce or out of the workforce, if you can offer help or support to people who are looking for jobs right now, I highly recommend that you do that because it is really tough out there. And I posted something a couple of weeks ago saying, one of my favorite things on LinkedIn is seeing a post where somebody posts that they got a new job and like literally thousands of people flood this person with congratulations and I'm so happy for you. And it's uplifting. And it's one of those social media experiences that I really get a lot of good vibes from, as they would say, because people have really lost a lot, lost people, lost time, and lost earning potential in the last 2 years, and especially for women who left the workforce in droves during COVID. It's really incumbent upon leaders in our community to help other women get jobs, network, find the right people that they can connect with. So I love doing that with my LinkedIn. I offered at the beginning of the pandemic as well to help introduce people, to provide endorsements. So endorsements is kind of like a recommendation on LinkedIn. And if there are young people that you've worked with that you can offer an encouraging word or tell people what a great coworker they were or great leader or great co-volunteer, I highly recommend that you can offer those accolades, and they're really uplifting and they really might help somebody land that job of their dreams. I'll show you what that looks like. So you can see this is a banner image right here. Okay, this is what my LinkedIn looks like. And you can see up here, that's what that vanity URL looks like. So you can change that in the settings of LinkedIn as well. And you can also add that you're open to work or open to hiring down here. So open to hiring, that can be paid work or volunteer work or internships as well. And then it also shows your last 2 employers here. One of the things I love, again, about Twitter is that ability to connect with people. One of the things about social media that a lot of people might not know is that even people who have social media platforms might not necessarily post a lot, but they are consuming content. So I always tell clients to not be dissuaded by not necessarily seeing engagement on posts like we used to before, but to understand that people use social media to scroll through. And even if they're not posting to their own personal profiles, especially on Twitter, they are using it to consume content, and Instagram as well. So on Twitter, so many ways to customize. Again, you can fix that banner image in the back to be something that is specific to you. Choosing your handle. Your handle is your name on Twitter. So in the beginning, it was difficult to get the name that you wanted, because so many people logged on to get their handles, and a lot of them have gone dormant now. So people say, oh, I'd love to use this handle, but it's, you know, no longer used by the person who claimed it. And that became a little bit of a sore point, but there's so many ways to customize and to make your own. I love hashtags as well, because again, those categorize conversations on Twitter, and you can jump into any conversation that you want to at any time. Never feel like it's a cocktail party that you can't enter. That's actually what the hashtags are for, so that you can see what people are talking about, and so that you can jump in and offer your opinion and your thoughts. The thing about Twitter as well is that it used to be 140 characters. So that's a little space to say a lot of things. And I found for me as a writer, it really kind of helped your writing skills to really kind of condense your thoughts into smaller chunks that were digestible for your audience. Was a real challenge and a really good way to distill what it is that you wanted to talk about. Now you don't have to worry about that as much, because the character limit is 280. So you have a lot more space. But what you might see as well is that people use the thread function to string together a line of thoughts, or even a mini essay to put together some their thoughts and opinions on certain things. For me, when it comes to the last tile of public versus private, because of what I do, I really feel that public is important versus private, because Facebook is private, basically. Like, your profile isn't necessarily open to people. You can, I don't want to say hide, but you can protect your identity on there a little bit more. I find that the user experience is diminished when people have private profiles on Twitter. But again, that is a personal choice, and it's done for a number of reasons, especially for journalists or for women speaking up about human rights abuses, issues like Me Too. They might have to change their profiles to private to avoid abuse. And that is another issue that is a whole other side tangent on social media. But it is a place where women can absolutely speak up and speak their minds, but there is a real deep pocket of misogyny and sexism that exists on these channels that women continue to bust through on a daily basis when they voice their opinions. So here's sort of what that looks like again. So you can see sort of my handle is here. And one of the things about handles too, as I used to stress, is that consistency is nice. So if you're going to be on Twitter, if you're going to be on Instagram, if you're going to be on LinkedIn, if you can keep, you know, this name as similar as possible, it makes it a little bit easier for people to find you. As far as the hashtags, I use these ones in my bio because those are the top 3 topics that I talk about and follow the most. And if people are looking for someone, an expert or someone to talk about those topics with, that's how they can find me. And as well, the other one here is customer experience. And then down here, you can also put which cities, oh, pardon me, which cities you're in as well. And so, of course, my banner image is the background of Winnipeg. That's very important to me. I love that shot. Okay, so when it comes to content, what you're going to be sharing, another really important topic. So articles are the easiest to share on most platforms, yes. And I like people who share a little bit of their opinion about what it is that they're sharing, because I can get that article from a news site. I don't need to see it in your Facebook feed per se, but I want to know, if you're sharing it, what you think about it. Why are you sharing it? What about this article spoke to you and you thought, oh, my network needs to see this, especially for me. I think it's important that you, if you're going to be active on social media, to, you know, talk to your network and your audience about what it is that's important to you, and what the topic of the day is that you'd like to expound upon. Images are obviously really easy to share. If you have young people in your life, you're probably very familiar with emojis and very familiar with memes, they're called, which are usually images with text, very sarcastic text usually, and silly images behind, and then GIFs, which is moving sort of little snippets of video that might be taken from shows or movies or anything like that. I love communicating in images. I can have a whole conversation in emoji. I think it's really fun, and it's really, it just challenges you to think differently, okay? And I think it's a really great way to connect with the young people in your life too, because not many people are expecting adults, as they would say, to use that type of technology and that type of graphic interface to interact. So I think it's fun. And it just kind of gives you time to play with the social media platform, to not be afraid of that. And then, of course, when you interact, so when you like or share and comment or otherwise, those types of things are important in terms of what you see next. So you might have heard during the pandemic, people who were kind of being, I don't want to say sucked into, but being driven kind of towards certain content online. So what that means is that when you're on Facebook and YouTube, if you continue to look at certain videos over and over again, there's a thing called an algorithm, which is, again, a computer program, a computer hint or suggestion, if you will, that says, okay, if Liz watched this video and she watched it for 4 minutes, or she watched the whole thing right through, that means Liz will probably like more of these types of videos that talk to those same topics. Now, that's a fine thing if you're talking about, Julia Child and her recipes online. But if you're talking about things that are nuanced and that are based in science and that are based in contentious issues, perhaps, that is where the people who are operating in misinformation and disinformation, that's where they live. And that can be a really tricky thing, because that goes back to our earlier point about how do we know if something's credible. So as someone who's worked in media and has young children, they love to come to me to say like these little facts that they've seen on TikTok or whatever. And I always say to them, and they get mad at me when I say this, but I say it anyway, because it's really crucial that people understand that media literacy is so important right now. So I say to the kids, where did you hear that? Did you hear it on TikTok? Oh, mama, you always ask me if I got it off TikTok, because they did get it off TikTok. But what I want them to do is to then go either to a secondary and then tertiary source to see, is that actually published anywhere else? Who initially published the content that they got the fact from? And can it be verified by any other independent media, or even a critique of that media? So for example, if something is published by the CDC or Health Canada, is it being reported by, which news outlets are reporting it, which blogs are talking about it, which government officials are talking about it, which ones are helping to talk about a public health message, or whatever it might be? These kids need to learn how to verify what it is that they're seeing online. And if they can't do it, it's just like when you had to write an essay in school, you have to support your arguments, right? And they have to stand up to the tests of, reliability and validity. So stopping to take a breath before you share something, I think, is always smart. It just makes it a little less heated when you're trying to share something. And if you take extra time to look at different sources, you're probably just going to take yourself down a more diverse road of information that you can check and then recheck again. And the thing about, sharing things that aren't true, I think it happens to the best of us. And I don't think it's necessarily done with malintent, but I think what's really incumbent to say to people that you've shared something with is that, I think I made a mistake sharing that. I think, I shouldn't have shared that, or here is a better argument or video or topic that you might want to read. It has a little bit more information. And being able to be humble about what it is that we share, I think, is really wise as well, because I think our children need to learn that doubling down is not necessarily healthy. It's important that we look at the totality of what we're looking at and be open to debate and open to change our minds. So here's a couple.
Can I ask you a question, Susie?
Yeah,
it's Natal. So with regard to Twitter, is there any relationship between Twitter and Facebook at all?
No, not really.
Well, the reason,
yeah.
Well, but you did say about Instagram and TikTok, but on the phone only. Because somebody said to me the other day, they followed me on something, but I don't do anything on Twitter or Instagram. So how could they follow me?
So sometimes what you'll see, especially now, is people mimicking accounts. And so you might get a message on Facebook Messenger. That's a whole other thing. But Facebook Messenger is really prone to hacking. So if you have that on your phone, I really encourage people to delete the app. There's very few reasons that you need the app. because most people in your life that you want to talk to, you already have their cell number. You might as well just text them. Unless they live overseas, I get that. You might use Facebook Messenger to chat that way, but really it's far more secure to use Facebook Messenger on desktop than it is to use it on your phone. It is a far more invasive app on your phone than you can imagine. And it's prone to hacking. It's prone to people cloning your account. And it's also the challenge with Messenger or on desktop or the phone is that when somebody sends you a link in Messenger, because you know it's coming from somebody that you are more prone to click on that link and not check if that link might be safe, or ask the person who sent it to you, did you really send me this and what is it about? It's a minefield. So I always encourage people to not use Facebook Messenger. It's my least favorite and least secure, as far as I'm concerned, platform for anybody to use. And it's so rife with opportunity to be hacked, to be cloned, and to just give you a hassle. So I don't think that it's a necessary app, actually. And I think that the fact that Facebook split it off from its main offering, which is Facebook alone, tells me that they have different priorities in Messenger that don't align necessarily with the people who are already using Facebook.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So here's just a really quick slide that was crafted by an educator in discussion and policy, to talk about, how we got, like I said at the beginning, sort of that satire and parody, like it's kind of goofy, but it's still funny. And then we kind of get into more nefarious options of mis and disinformation, where it's misleading content. So if you posted on Facebook or Twitter, or even Instagram in the last 2 years during COVID, you might have seen a fact check come up that says, for local COVID-19 resources, please click here. And those were geolocated to each country's federal government offering the latest news about where to get your shot or this and that. So some things are not necessarily all wrong, but they have enough wrong in them that it no longer can be called completely factual. So then there's the other piece of that called imposter content, when genuine sources are impersonated. So CTV did a story about this. I believe it was actually, I've lost all sense of time thanks to COVID, but I'm going to say it was last summer. And it's about a case where you go to a website and you kind of scroll down to the end of the story, and maybe you see Lisa LaFlemme and you see her face there. And it says that she is endorsing these cannabis pills or whatever it was. So it looked like a trusted news resource, Lisa LaFlemme of CTV News, who people watch every single night and get their news from, was also endorsing this product. Well, that's not the case at all. It was a complete scam, but they were using her face and they were using her likeness to push this product. One woman was defrauded of, I believe it was $5,000, if not more. And that is the type of imposter content that people need to be careful of as well. When you're on a website and you get to the bottom of that website, be really careful of what you click on down there, because those things are never really good things to click on in general, but they don't necessarily lead to the greatest content or most verifiable content either. Then you've got your fabricated content as well, which is just pure out false and designed to deceive and to get clicks to other websites, false, and then just more false, and then manipulated. So you just have to be really careful about what you click on online. And I think that if you have, friends and family in your life who are prone to sharing lots of things, it might not be the most fun conversation to say, oh, I don't really like you sharing this. And I know that can be really tricky. What I did was just breeze by the content, not necessarily even look at it, just let people do what they need to do. Certain people are coping in really challenging ways right now because people are stressed, they're emotional, they are upset, and they just don't know how to deal, right? So giving people a little bit of grace and giving yourself some compassion to scroll past content that normally you might click on and might, have an opinion on, gives you back a little bit more time in your day and a little bit more calmness. So in terms of the creator economy, this is my new favorite thing. What that refers to is that people who are going to make money online, and they're going to make money on their social media. So you might have seen in the States, there are things called creator houses. So in Los Angeles, they will have these huge mansions and bring in like 10 to 15, young people who have huge followings on TikTok or Instagram, and get them to live together while they create content. Like that's the new kind of reality show. And people are making lots of money off it, but it's also a little bit disingenuous for some people who grew up on these platforms because they don't see it as a credible way to use your social media platform. And it really depends on sort of who the subject is in the creator economy. You will see makeup influencers, you will see fashion influencers, people who are just already using products and want to share what they're doing. They're not necessarily in it for the money per se, but that's how they get started. Then they get courted by brands, they get courted by business to come and turn into more of a social commerce piece. So I think there's a lot of potential there as well. And it is very attractive looking, I'm sure, for young people, but I do kind of cry a little bit inside when I hear young people say they want to be famous on social media as a life goal. I don't know if that's necessarily a life goal that I want to promote, but I think there's other things that we can do that we can then promote on social media. And what you'll see as well, is video is so much more promotable and shared on these social media platforms. And that's for a reason. Again, that goes back to the algorithm that we talked about, that computer programming code that tells people that video is what they're going to see first and what they're going to see most. So Instagram Reels, which is what you're seeing on Facebook right now, most likely being pushed through your feed, that is absolutely an Instagram product. And they're trying to move that content through the app as well. TikTok is a fascinating app. Now, when TikTok first came out, I was not necessarily sold on it simply because of its security issues. It is an app that is based in China. The content that you put on the app is held on servers in China, and that absolutely does give me pause. But I think that the thing about social media use, especially for young people, is that you're never going to get them to not use something. So then we have to mitigate the risk of using these apps. And so that is a different conversation for different families and for different people, but you have to have the ground rules that you want to stick to, right? I also really love TikTok for editing. Yes, it's an app for sharing content, but it is actually the ultimate video editing app. If you are involved in any kind of production, if you do art, if you do, video, if you do local theater, whatever it might be, you can create some really fascinating and engaging content on TikTok with nothing but your phone. That is almost unprecedented. Like even Instagram stories, not that great. It's incredible. As far as the video versus image, Instagram stories remains very popular, and the grid posts. Now, what is offered as well to people who are content creators on these platforms is that you can monetize your channels as well by turning certain posts into ads, if that's the way that you'd like to go. And that can sort of help bring you back to that creator economy where you can then make money off your social media. Oh, if I go back there for a second, this is a local, she's from Winnipeg, and she is a local influencer, fashion influencer, Manny. And she tries on these amazing, bright, sunny, happy, beautiful outfits almost every day and shares them with people around the world. And her enthusiasm is absolutely contagious. So this is her TikTok account. And, she has 41,000 followers. And like her vibe is just so fun and so happy. And I mean, how can you look at that green jacket and that smile and not want to get to know her better? Yeah. When it comes to best practices on social media, I think, we sort of talked about a lot of these, is that be mindful of what you share and what you comment on. It is a bit of a window into, sort of your life and what you believe in and what you support. And don't just talk about yourself or your accomplishments. Really be gracious with sharing accolades and sharing things in your community that are happening that are important to you. And I also really want to stress, you are never too old to try a new social media platform. There are so many fun, elderly is not the right word, experienced people that are having a resurgence on social media because young people are loving the way that they tell stories. And there's a generation of people out there who have incredible stories that might not get shared otherwise. And I think social media is a really cool way to do that. So Manny, who I showed before, she's probably in her 50s, but she attracts young people in their teens and 20s because her mantra is that style and fashion does not belong to an age, a body size, or anything like that. Fashion is fun and it's for everybody. Another one of my favorite creators to follow on Instagram and TikTok are called The Old Gays. And it's four gay men who live in Palm Springs, and they do these cheeky, saucy videos on Instagram and TikTok. Sometimes they have guest stars come along as well. But I think it's really important that today's youth can see that diversity exists at every age, and those stories exist at every age. And there's something that we can learn from these people as well. I love it. I thank you so much for your time today. And if you have any questions for me, I would love to take them.
Don't be shy, people.
I see Linda. Linda raised a hand.
Yes, it's Linda Greiner. Thank you, Susie. It's been very enlightening. I just want to ask you, IOD being a nonprofit organization, what social media platform would you suggest that we use to try and call awareness to IODE and maybe recruit possible new members?
I would definitely say Instagram. The challenge with groups like not-for-profit groups and community groups is that you don't have a lot of resources, and you don't have a lot of time necessarily either, right? So depending on which type of demographic you're looking to connect with, Instagram is a great way to reach young people and to put out in the world sort of what you're doing, and to find those hashtags that are popular wherever you live. Certain cities and certain hashtags kind of exist in popularity in those places. And so aligning yourself with other organizations, like for example, you know, Girl Guides, like that's a natural kind of connection, you know, things that are promoting women taking over the world. Like I am all for that. And anything that you can do to connect with young people to show them what you've done and what you're hoping to do in the future, absolutely would be great on Instagram.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I see one more hand. Shelley?
Hi.
Hi.
I am broadcasting. I like to broadcast live to the internet.
Yeah.
A service that's happening June the 12th.
Okay.
Can you do it over 2 platforms at the same time?
You can, but you would need 2 different devices.
Okay.
And you would need to have someone managing both while you do that.
Okay. That's what I thought. You might need the 2 devices, but yeah. I thought I'd ask to see if you could do the 2.
Yeah.
Which would be the best one? I was thinking Facebook. I did it Facebook last year.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
If people have come to expect that content from you on there, I think that makes sense. And the other part of that too is that you can save the video to Facebook or to your phone, and then repopulate it again to YouTube if you want to do that later.
Oh, okay, good.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good talk.
Of course. Thank you. I see Janice has a hand raised.
Hi. Excellent information. I was busy copying things down really fast and wishing my daughter was here to listen to this as well. I've had a number of hacks on Facebook Messenger, and I love the idea of just eliminating it. How do you go about doing that?
So great question. So you basically just delete the app off your phone. And it doesn't go anywhere on desktop. Desktop is a completely different issue. It's still there on desktop. You can't necessarily separate it, but if you don't use it, you don't use it. But absolutely the app, I highly recommend people don't use the app and delete the app. So when you delete the app, you delete its connection to your phone and any kind of, think of it as like a spider, you know, in a spider web. So anything that is connected to that app, once you delete that app and it deletes all its information, that is the best thing you can do. The thing about Facebook Messenger that's tricky is that once you install it on your phone, it has, if you have provided it access to your contacts, it does have access to your contacts. And that's why it's such an invasive app in the first place. And I don't recommend it. But once you get rid of it, you will probably see the likelihood of those hacks and clones decreasing immensely.
Yes, because I figured the reasons I've caught them is that it's not personal enough. It's not this doesn't sound like the person I know. So I always do what you said and send them a message.
Correct.
not through Messenger, to say, did you send me something? And it all came back, no.
And the thing I want people to know as well is that these billion-dollar companies who make billions of dollars in advertising every year do not care about Janice Ogilvy in Calgary, Alberta. They don't even care about Susie Parker, like a social media expert. They don't even care about people who have 20, 30, 40, $50,000 or 50,000 followers on their platforms. They just have zero customer service when it comes to that. If your Instagram gets hacked and that's how you make a living, that's your blog, that's your channel, that's your shop, for example, what do? You have no recourse. It is so challenging and it is so heartbreaking for people to experience that. So the other piece I tell people, if they are business people, they have entrepreneurs, they have businesses, never put all your eggs in a social media basket. Invest in a website, invest in a blog, own your digital real estate.
Okay, so if I do it on the phone, do I also have to then do it on my iPad because they're connected, or will it automatically?
Yeah, absolutely. Do it on both, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And again, excellent information.
Thank you. Nadine, I see your hand up. I apologize if that's not how you say your name.
There. Hi, all ways are the correct ways to say my name.
Okay.
I have a question about Instagram. Where do people go to ask for help with an Instagram if your library person isn't able to help you?
Oh, so what are you looking to do?
Sorry, in meantime, could you stop sharing your screen for us, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
What type of help are you looking for Instagram?
I got an email to tell me about things that were happening on that I might want to see on my Instagram account.
Yeah.
One of them was my IODE account.
Yeah.
And I didn't send that message. It was from somebody else who, if you followed the link to their account, did not exist.
Yeah.
So
those are basically just marketing messages from Instagram. So if you have the email that your Instagram account is tied to, sometimes they will send you notifications, it's called, and they will sort of highlight what's been happening on the channel. If you haven't, checked in lately, if you haven't opened the app lately, that's all that means. So that's just email marketing, and you could actually ignore those, and you can actually unsubscribe from those as well, so that they won't come to you anymore. So if you scroll down to the bottom of that email, you will see an unsubscribe link. And if they're bothersome or you don't need them, then I absolutely suggest that you just unsubscribe from that.
and if I can't get back into my IODE account anymore, should I dump it?
So you've forgotten the password, is that it?
No, it won't let me log into it because it thinks I'm not me.
Does it say why?
No.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I mean about how there's no customer service for these things, which is so upsetting, right? I understand if you've built a channel and you've built a platform and you can't get back into it. Yeah, it's challenging. So if you haven't been in there for a while and you haven't, necessarily even been posting content, I absolutely say dump it and start a new one, because there's not a lot of recourse available at that point.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I see Marty and Karen.
Yeah, except that. Liz, your hand's up too. Are you about to ask the question you put in the chat? Oh, you're on mute, Liz.
I think I'd have worked it out by now. This is why they say that social media or these Zoom calls are a bit like seances.
So Liz, are you asking your chat question?
I was going to ask the chat question because I didn't think Susie had
Yep, there you go. Then go right ahead. Go right ahead.
So the question is, what does the current takeover on Twitter do to your support of the platform? Thank you. That question's a great question. I don't think there's a worse person that could take over Twitter, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
And the reason why I say that is because Twitter is a very toxic place for women and non-diverse people on the first place. And I don't feel like he has the understanding of what that means to be publicly open to character assassinations and just daily abuse on that site. I believe that I still think it's such a great platform because of it's such a fantastic opportunity to meet like-minded people from all over the world. Like I've met so many people on Twitter, and they've become friends in real life. Like we visited each other and things like that. So, you know, there's so much potential there, but I think it also reminds us again that regulation is key. Now, whether or not that takes place in the US, I don't see it happening anytime soon. It's just, it's too political down there,
Right.
But other countries absolutely have the ability to enforce privacy laws, to enforce anti-hate, anti-spam laws as well on these social media platforms, and they lack the fortitude to do so. So that's when it becomes up to us as voters and constituents to tell our elected officials that we would like to see more oversight of these platforms. Coming from the media side as well, there was a very contentious issue in Australia a couple of years back when they were going to be banning Facebook from sharing news articles because these journalists were not being paid for their work, and Facebook was just sharing this content again, and these people, the people who produce the content, were not getting remunerated for it, and that's not acceptable either. So we talk about the creator economy, and I mean journalism's the ultimate creator economy when they are being paid to tell stories, being told to investigate things, being paid to hold government and institutions to account. And we need to support that institution. And these social media platforms make it very difficult to hold anybody to account. And that's not the direction we should be going in.
Yeah, I guess what I've tended to do is just ignore certain content that I was ignoring anyway, but
I also want to say on Twitter, there is a really, there are some ways that you can enhance your user experience on Twitter. You can go to your settings and you can mute a lot of words. So if there are things that you don't want to see, you can go into that list and add as many as you want, and you'll never see that content come up in your feed. And if you are an avid Twitter user, that can greatly enhance your user experience.
I have done that to some extent, but
sorry, Liz. Yes. I also encourage people, if you have had a negative or dangerous interaction with somebody, to report the post, take a screenshot of the post, save it in case you need to make a police record of it, report, sorry, that's the word I'm looking for, but then to immediately block. I have no problem blocking people, especially when it comes to misogyny, sexism, racism, anything like that. I do not tolerate that kind of content. Good. And sorry about it. Like this is your feed. And if things are upsetting you or do not resonate with your values, absolutely do not let them into your mind space.
Great.
Sorry, there was Marnie and Karen. Did you have a question or you just wanted Liz to speak? Okay, great. I see Shelley.
One more question, a follow-up with the messenger. Sure. If you take it off your devices, except for your main computer, is it okay to use Messenger while in Facebook? Is that the best way
on your desktop?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's the preferred way to use it. And the reason why I think is because, first of all, when people are on desktop, they seem to be a bit more mindful of their experience. You're not as maybe distracted as you might be on your phones. And I think that it gives you an opportunity to pause and to send that message to whoever sent you the link or whatever it is and say, hey, did you mean to send this? So that they can reply to you and say, no, don't touch it, I've been hacked, you know, that type of thing. And so I still use Messenger, but only on my desktop. And I tell people, if you're sending me messages on Facebook, I'm not getting them, so text me. And I think, again, you know, one of the things about social media that is really interesting to me is that people do not hold to boundaries on social media. And you are absolutely allowed to have boundaries on social media. You can tell people, do not send me Facebook messages. I won't see them. I won't respond. Or if I do see them, it might not be for a month or so till I get back to using my Facebook on desktop. Like this idea that people have to be available all the time, right now, It's kind of toxic, as the kids would say. And you taking back your time and setting those boundaries is a very smart thing to do.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I see Juliana, and I think, are we over, Natalie?
Yeah, we are just a little bit, Susie.
Okay,
but...
so I'll take this last question from Juliana. You're on mute, Juliana, sorry.
There you go. Am I okay now?
You are.
Thank you.
Loud and clear.
Thank you very much. You've demystified these social platforms, the variety, their use, how effective they can be. Don't be afraid of them. I was going to go to the library this afternoon in between our workshop and do an Instagram, and I won't look ingenue. What I really enjoyed is you're telling us, for example, if you're involved in local theater as a fundraiser, use it to advertise for a good cause. Ultimately, we are a charitable organization and we want to do our good work. And I particularly enjoyed hearing the words grace and graciousness in your presentation, and accolades about people in the community. At the end of the day, we are communitarians. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. Natalie, thank you so much for inviting me today. I'm grateful to have been here and to have shared some time with you all today.